In general, I'd like you to have some sort of idea as to how to question a statistic. If someone quotes some information to you, if you see some information written down, don't just believe everything that you read. Learn to ask some questions from knowing what it takes to be a correct scientific or statistical or survey. For instance, who conducted the research? Is this is this a reliable polling organization? Is this, if I would not necessarily believe the NRA about gun control statistics, I wouldn't necessarily believe someone whose organization was called Mothers Against Guns necessarily. I want to see these people hire an independent polling organization. Where was the study published? Was this just published on the internet, or did they have to convince a respected journal or a newspaper to publish their results? That makes a difference to me. How many people had to read this carefully and decide whether it was believable or not before it got published? What was the exact question asked in a study? In what is it? One time, the Kinsey report, they asked, in the last, 6 years, have you had a homosexual experience? And I believe 10% of the population said, yes, I have. And then more recently, someone conducted a study and said, for the last year, have you been exclusively homosexual? And only like 4 or 5% of the population said, yes, I have. So the question, and both of these people didn't necessarily publish the exact question. One group said, hey, 10% of the population is gay. The other group said, no, it's more like 4% of the population is gay. Oh my goodness, how can this be? Well, it depends on the question asked. Clearly, there's some people who are gay some of the time and not all the time, and some people who are gay all the time. That makes a difference. If someone says, this is what they said, this is the results, say, well, what exactly did you ask? And how many people did you ask? Did you ask 5 people, or did you ask 500 people? How did you choose these people? Did you ask 5 of your friends who are also racist like you? Or did you randomly choose people from a population? How you chose your people tells me what you're really talking about. If you conducted your survey at a gun show, I'm not necessarily, then your population is people at that gun show. So I wouldn't be surprised if the people at a gun show had different beliefs about gun control than people in general. If you ask people outside of church, you're going to get a different population than if you ask people inside of a dance club. How did you ask these people? Did you give them a yes or no question? Did you give them choices? I think the current president is an idiot, or I think the current president is a moron. I mean, that's sometimes people ask surveys like that. Or, I think he's the greatest president in the world. I think he's the worst president in the world. Are you giving them options? How did you ask them? Did you come up to them? Did you go to the door? Did you have very, very large people carrying guns come up to your door and say, do I have a right to have this gun? Because maybe not as many people are going to be like, no, I think we should take that gun away from you. These are extreme cases, but if you ask in some ways, you can swing the information one way or another. If you are given a scientific piece of information, you can say, again, who conducted the research? Was this a university? Was this a laboratory? Was this someone in their backyard? Where was it published? Again, is it a respectable journal? Is this the journal, is it what's called peer-reviewed journal? Did you have to get a lot of other people in your particular field to agree that this was worthy of being published, or did you just publish it on your own? What exactly was the experiment? What did you do in this experiment? How big was the experiment? Did you do an experiment on 10 mice, or did you do an experiment on 10,000 mice? Did you look at 4 smokers? I mean, the back of my cereal box says, 50% of the people who ate shredded wheat lost weight. Did you have two people eat shredded wheat? One of the people lost weight, the other one didn't lose weight? I mean, if you look at any two people over the course of time, the odds are their weight is going to go up and down. So whether or not they're eating cereal or not, you expect maybe one of them to lose weight. And another thing is, how many other times was the experiment conducted? Because maybe they did have 10 people eat cereal. And maybe they had 10 people eat cereal and nobody lost weight. So then they had a different 10 people eat cereal and 2 people lost weight. And maybe they did this experiment 30 times and one of the times, half of the people lost weight. Now, did you, and then you just talk about the one where it worked. Drug companies do this. They do lots and lots of studies, and they only publish the results of the one that looks best. Was a control group used? Did you actually have some people, did you really compare your method to nothing at all? Was the study blind? Did the people know whether or not they were in the control group or the experimental group? Was the study double blind? Were you yourself blind? If your career, if your grants, if everything about you, what you do for a living, because you're a scientist, depends on your miracle drug working, then you might not want to be in the dark as to who's getting the drug and who's not. You might have someone come in that you know is taking the drug, and they say, it doesn't seem to be doing anything. And you might start pushing on them, say, are you sure? Don't you feel a little bit better? Don't you think that you could say that you're getting at least a small improvement so that my results look good, so that my reputation looks good, so that I can sell this drug? But if it's double blind, you don't know who to pressure. So that's important. What are the exact numbers involved? Always ask for the exact numbers. It always drives me nuts when they say, eating tomatoes lowers your chance of cancer. How much does it lower your chance of cancer? Does it take you from having a 10% chance of getting cancer in your life to a 1% chance of cancer in your life? That's huge. I should eat tomatoes all the time. Does it go from a 10% chance of getting cancer to a 9.7% chance of cancer? That's not a very big difference. They're always doing this to us. They're always saying, this increases your chance of this decreases your chance of this, but they don't tell you from what to what. So I really want the exact numbers. And when they tell you where it's published, you can go and look it up. You can go read, what were the numbers? How many people did they ask? Usually a lot of the stuff is on the internet, so you go look up the link. But it's really, really annoying when they say, drinking coffee causes stress. Well, how much coffee did you need to drink, and how much stress are we talking about? And how do you know that it wasn't just that stressed people tend to drink more coffee in the first place? So that is that. Hopefully, you probably knew all this stuff anyway, but hopefully you have some sort of idea as when people start quoting numbers to you, what sort of questions to ask. Don't just believe everything. I tend to believe a lot of things, and one thing, if you are interested in this sort of thing, I would recommend a book called How to Lie with Statistics. And this book, if you read this book, it's in your syllabus. If you read this book and talk to me about it, you don't even need to write a paper about it or anything like that. If you come to my office hour, sit down and say, I read How to Lie with Statistics, and conduct a conversation with me about it for 10, 15, 20 minutes, I will add extra credit to your final grade. It's like adding points to every single one of your exams and homework assignments. It's a pretty big deal. How many points I add depends on how great the conversation is. If you sit down and say, I read it, I don't have any thoughts about it, you're not really getting any credit, extra credit. But if I'm not picking stupid books. This is a great book. It really goes into everything that I've talked about today, and so much more. And I love the book. It's not that big of a book. Anyway, you read this book, you say, how can I get extra credit? This is one of the ways you can get extra credit.